Tatropashprishya paniyam Pitva mrishtam mani prabham Vriksha sandham upavrajya Saramo ratham avishata Tatra prishya paniyam Pitva mrishtam mani prabham Vriksha sandham upavrajya Saramo ratham avishat Tatropashprishya paniyam Pitva mrishtam mani prabham Vriksha sandham upavrajya Saramo ratham avishat. Madjis. Tatra, there. Upashprishya, touching the water. Paniyam, in his hand. Pitva, drinking. Mrishtam, sweet. Mani, like jewels. Prabham, effulgent. Vriksha, of trees. Sandham, a grove. Upavrajya, moving up to. Saramaha, with Balram. Ratham, the chariot. Avishat, he mounted. Translation: the river's sweet water was more effulgent than brilliant jewels. After Lord Krishna had touched it for purification, he drank some from his hand. Then he had the chariot move near a grove of trees and climbed back on, along with Balram. Text 40. Akrura asked the two lords to take their seats on the chariot. Then, taking their permission, he went to a pool in the Yamuna and took his bath as enjoined in the scriptures. Text 41. While immersing himself in the water and reciting eternal mantras from the Vedas, Akrura suddenly saw Balram and Krishna before him. Text 42 and 43. Akrura thought, how can the two sons of Anakadundubi, who are sitting in the chariot, be standing here in the water? They must have left the chariot. But when he came out of the river, there they were on the chariot, just as before. asking himself, was the vision I had of them in the water an illusion? Akrura re-entered the pool. Text 44 and 45. When Akrura now saw Anantashesh, the Lord of the serpents, receiving praise from Siddhas, Charanas, Gandharvas and demons, who all had their heads bowed. The personality of Godhead whom Akrura saw had thousands of heads, thousands of hoods and thousands of helmets. His blue garment and his fair complexion, as white as the filament of the lotus stem, made him appear like white Kailash mountain with his many peaks. Text 46 and 48 to 48. Akrura then saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead lying peacefully on the lap of Lord Anantashesh. The complexion of that Supreme Person was like a dark blue cloud. He wore yellow garments and had 4 arms and reddish lotus petal eyes. His face looked attractive and cheerful with his smiling, endearing glance and lovely eyebrows, its raised nose and finely formed ears, and its beautiful cheeks and reddish lips. The Lord's broad shoulders and expansive chest were beautiful, and his arms long and stout. His neck resembled a conch shell, his navel was deep, and his abdomen bore lines like those on a banyan leaf. Text 49 to 50. He had large loins and hips, thighs like an elephant trunk, and shapely knees and shanks. His raised ankles reflected the brilliant effulgence emanating from his nails to his petal-like toes, which beautified his lotus feet. Text 51-52. Adorned with helmet, bracelets and armlets, which were all bedecked with many priceless jewels, and also with a belt, a sacred thread, necklace, ankle bells and earrings, the Lord shone with dazzling effulgence. In one hand he had a lotus flower, in the other a conch shell, disc and club, gracing his chest with the Srivastha mark and the brilliant Kaustuba gem and a flower garland. Text 53 to 55. Encircling the Lord and worshipping him were Nanda, Sunanda and his other personal attendants, Sanak and other Kumaras, Brahma, Rudra and other chief demigods, the 9 chief Brahmanas, and the best of the saintly devotees headed by Prahlad, Narad and Uparichara-Vasu. Each of these great personalities were worshipping the Lord by chanting sanctified words of praise in his own unique mood. Also in attendance were the Lord's principal internal potencies, Shri, Pushti, Gir, Kanti, Kirti, Tushti, Ila and Urja, as were his material potencies, Vidya, Avidya and Maya, and his internal pleasure potency, Shakti. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains the Lord's potency mentioned in these verses. Shri is the potency of wealth, Pushti that of strength, Gir knowledge, Kanti beauty, Kirti fame, and Tushti renunciation. These are the Lord's 6 opulences. Ila is his Bhu-Shakti, also known as Sandhini, the internal potency of whom the element earth is an expansion. Urja is his internal potency for performing pastimes. She expands as the tulsi plant in this world. Vidya and Avidya, knowledge and ignorance, are external potencies who cause the living entities liberation and bondage, respectively. Shakti is his internal pleasure potency. Ladini and Maya is an internal potency who is the basis of Vidya and Avidya. The word Cha implies the presence of Lord's marginal energy, the Jiva Shakti, who is subordinate to Maya. Lord Vishnu was being served by all these personified potencies. Text 56 and 57. As the great devotee Akrura beheld all this, he became extremely pleased and felt enthused with transcendental devotion. His intense ecstasy caused his bodily hairs to stand on end and tears to flow from his eyes, drenching his entire body. Somehow managing to steady himself, Akrura bowed his head on the ground. Then he joined his palms in supplication, and a voice choked with emotion, very slowly and attentively began to pray. Thus end the purport of the humble servant of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada on the 10th canto, 39th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Akrura's Vision. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So it's a very, very extremely interesting point in the Srimad Bhagavatam that we have just reached. We have heard this statement that one thing that is constant, which does not change, is change. Everything is constantly changing. There has never been a time where nothing has changed. It's constantly changing. Things are moving forward. It's like that in the airport when you have this conveyor belt. It keeps on going round. There's never a time where it stops many times, but the time factor is like a conveyor belt. It keeps on going round and round and round. So many times this time factor is described as very, very cruel. Very, very cruel, because it is this time factor that takes away everything in due course. Takes away whatever situation we are currently. At the end of this Bhagavatam class, you would not be that situation. We have changed. In half an hour, you have changed. Time has moved on. What you were half an hour back, you are no more that now. Little do we know this fact, but it is constantly changing. And many a times, there are particular situations in our life, particular episodes that are very, very dear to us, very, very enriching, very, very special. And we would like to hang on to them. There are some situations, very, very special. But we see we can't hang on to them. It just goes. Like if I think that the time I had with the devotees and with my spiritual master in 1988, 89, 90. Oh, What special time? But it's gone. It is not there anymore. Similarly, we see our life, infancy. We all were infants. Infancy is nothing but the age of innocence. When we're infants, we're very innocent. As we grow further, we have our childhood, infancy and then childhood, which is somewhat of innocence but a lot of fun. Because we understand what is not good and what is good. So we want to have fun. So innocence goes away and then comes the fun factor. And as we grow further, we come to, for males, boyhood, and for ladies, girlhood, whatever you call them. Is there something called girlhood? I know, whatever. Boyhood. We hear in Gita, boyhood, but I don't know what it means for girls. Girlhood. So then there is mischief. Innocence changes to fun, changes to mischief. This enjoyment. Sometimes mischief at the cost of others. Or mischief, just innocent mischief. And each of this phase we enjoy. I'm just go back in your life and how much we enjoyed the mischief. I used to play cricket, and every time I would break a glass of a particular person with the ball I would hit. It was fun. Every time there would be a tree of which would grow lemon, and just next to our building, which later on I knew it. It belonged to ISKCON Prabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. He was staying next door, and he was not a devotee that time, nor was I. But I would every day in my vacation pluck some lemons, and drinking that lemon juice was fun. There are so many other lemons available in the house, but plucking that lemon, with great excitement and plucking that was fun. There was mischief. The time I was learning the bicycle, and getting my hand scraped against the wall because I couldn't control it was fun. Every day I have this. Even now I have black marks here because I would just scrape my hand constantly with. These are small innocent things, but it was fun. But we couldn't hang on to that. It just got further. And as we move on in our life, then comes the phase of responsibility. 10th standard, 12th standard, and then the innocence is gone, the fun is gone, the mischief is gone, the unfortunate situation of discriminating between men and women starts in our mind. We are no more innocent, and the unfortunate desires to enjoy starts creeping in, and simultaneously to that comes responsibility. And we want to hang on to the previous life, the previous stage of our life, but it is no more. Change is constant. It goes on. The life goes on. And how much ever you want to hang on to that period, you can't. Many, many years back, we heard a story from His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. He was in Italy, and he went to this interesting museum. A large museum, which used to be a place of tapasya of many, many thousands of Christian saints. And after they would do their tapasya, they would die, and their remains would be right there in that place. And over the years, there were thousands and thousands of remains of these Christians, bones, skull bones, and all the different bones. So they were sacred. It says, they were wondering, what do we do with these bones? So they made a museum. And every aspect of this, every part of this museum was made by the bones of these saints. The tubelite, it is a bone. And they put tubelite in everything. And he showed a photo of a saint chanting with beads. And everybody goes through that. Everything is bones. Can you imagine this chandelier? It is all bones. I know the lights is all bones, because they used this thousands of sacred bones, and it's a very, very revolutionary experience. It changes your heart. And Maharaj was explaining that as he was going by, there are many tourists who were coming, many boys and girls, girlfriends and boyfriends, husbands and wives. They would be just walking and they would be seeing each other and seeing this particular museum. And then comes the punchline. When you are just about to exit from that museum, a long museum for hours you are going around, enjoying. And the saints are giving a message to you. All the saints are giving a message. Before you leave, you must learn this message. And there's a big board which is quoting the saints. And the saints say that what you are, we used to be. And what we are, you will be. Very powerful, sobering statement. And Maharaj was explaining that the boyfriend and girlfriend would be arm in arm, and then they would read this and they would look at each other. Because it's sobering. He said, we are like this, but ultimately we are going to be this bones. Change. Constantly changing. And the most interesting part is that this change also doesn't affect Krishna, but Krishna voluntarily becomes part of this change. Krishna is never affected. Never. He's beyond the time factor. He's the only person beyond the time factor. He's the source of time factor. He is the time factor. But he decides to get influenced by the time. And what we are reading here is an extremely important point in the pastime of Srimad Bhagavatam. As we went through the journey of the 9 cantos, we entered into this most amazing sweet grove, what we call the forest of grace, as it is called, of Vrindavan. And we saw the most graceful Lord, Sri Krishna, performing the most graceful pastimes in this forest of grace, with his most graceful devotees, the Brijabasis. Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesh Tanaya Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachitupasana Vrajavadu Vargena Va Kalpita. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesh Tanaya. The Lord that we worship is the Lord who is the son of Nanda Maharaj. Tadhama Vrindavana. And the place that we worship is the holy land of Sri Vrindavan. And the devotees are the Vrajavadus, the Brijabasis, specifically the gopis of Vrindavan. But Krishna enjoyed for years these beautiful sweet pastimes in Vrindavan. And so many pastimes. Every second there were unlimited pastimes of Vrindavan. And they are very, very sweet. And we have witnessed, all of us have been witness to this sweet pastimes of Krishna. But as the time went by, as we discussed, no matter how sweet are the pastimes for Krishna, or in his pastimes in this world, he cannot hang on to that. Time moves on. And when he did achieve this age, what was the exact age? 11 years? What is the exact time when he left Vrindavan? 10 years, 8 months and some 52 days or something. That was the Brijabasis say. 10 years, 8 months, some days. There's exact time where it was time for Krishna to move on. Akrura came. And we have been witnessing what happened. Akrura said that he must go. So what's happening right now is an amazing transition from the sweet pastimes of Krishna, which was just happened yesterday. The yesterday's purport was talking about the sweet pastime of Krishna in Vrindavan. The gopis are crying. The most esoteric discussions between Krishna and the gopis of Vrindavan, who are ready to give their lives. Can you imagine the love of the gopis? That they're ready to give the dust of their lotus feet to Krishna, to save Krishna of a headache even for a second. Knowing very well that they may have to go for millions of years in suffering for doing this act. That is the love of the gopis. That's how surrendered That's how sold out they were to Krishna. And that was the intimacy Krishna had with the gopis for 10 plus years. But then, Akrura was selected for helping Krishna to move on with his life. Because Vrindavan can't be always. You have to enter into Mathura. And you have to do your duties. Krishna says, one of the most amazing statements for me, one of the most statements, many statements in our scriptures, but one of the most amazing statements when I heard, Krishna says, I don't know the verse, but he says, when I come to this world, I also work. Is it right? He said, I also do work. There's some words like that. That I also work. When I come, I also do work. I was amazed that this is most amazing. Krishna also works. How can we not be working if Krishna, who is Sarva Karana Karanam, who is the cause of all causes, we work for some cause and to be a cause of something. But Krishna is the cause of all causes. He says, when I come here, I also work. So this part of Krishna's work. Krishna is moving on, and Akrura is taking Krishna, and Akrura is a very, very amazing strategic planner. We have this initiative in our GBC, the Strategic Planning Team, SPT, or they call it SPN now, Strategic Planning Network, where there are some very, very empowered management experts, and of course devotionally astute devotees who are working together to do strategic planning for the overall growth of ISKCON in a holistic way. It's an effort which is going on since 2006. So Akrura was a very, very strategic planner, because you please understand the task he had on his hand. Just give it a thought. Krishna never takes a step off of Vrindavan. It knew it. That you cannot, it is wrong to even, it is offensive to think that Krishna takes a step out of Vrindavan. He doesn't leave Vrindavan. And Akrura had that most difficult, to a very good extent, offensive task with respect to the Brijbasis, to take Krishna out of Vrindavan. Of course, when we say Krishna doesn't take a step out of Vrindavan, he is always present in his mood, in his bhava. He physically is there. I mean, physically may not be there, but he's present. But here Akrura had to take Krishna out, so he had to really work very, very strategically on how to do it. So he went, and he was moving real fast. Because when you want to get something done, sometimes you have to move fast before people start thinking what's happening. And many times, book distributors or people who are salespeople, they talk fast and they say, yes sir, here's the book, thank you very much. And they have to move on before the other person realizes what has happened. That guy has gone further, is it not? So this is the expert strategist. That he has to move fast, and he has to beat the pace of the other person's mind by his own pace of his mind. So before that guy realizes what has really happened, he moves on. Many times people come to say, ये book नहीं चाहिए, पता नहीं क्यों लिया मैंने book. आप लोग ने, but he said no, now there's no exchange policy. Because the devotee, the book distributor has been very sharp and fast. Similarly, many times we go to buy anything and somebody sells you very hard. And you just, okay, de do. And then, why did I buy this? Because that person's mind, his pace is faster than the way you think. Before you realize you don't need it, you already bought it. Similarly, Akrura had to move fast before the Brijbasis realized what they were doing. That's why even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was taking sannyas, and when he met his mother, she was waiting there on the door. And he spoke. And before his mother just gives blessings, he ran out. He said, thank you mother, you give me blessings. He ran out. Before his mother could really realize, what have I done? How can I give blessings to my son to take sannyas? But Mahaprabhu was already halfway to Katwa by then. And similarly, Keshav Bharati Maharaj, he said, see the people, see the revolt of the people. I can't give you sannyas. They will break my whole ashram. They said, okay, you plus go and get complete permission of all the devotees. Mahaprabhu was ready to go back. And then Keshav Bharati Maharaj said that you are so dedicated to this thought. You can do anything. I'll give you sannyas. You don't have to go. Because he was determined. Akrur was determined. Externally, as the agent of Kamsa, to fulfill Kamsa's plans. Kamsa had his own strategic plan. And Akrur was an integral part of that strategic plan. But Akrur, as a special devotee that he is, he wanted to help Krishna to come out of Vrindavan and fulfill his promise. Praritranaya sadhunam vinashaya shaduskritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. That very, very special purpose of the incarnations and here of the Supreme Lord Himself to come to the earth planet, to annihilate the miscreants, to establish the principles of dharma. So Akrur said that I must get him. But please understand, even the Lord needs help to transition. Because any transition is difficult. Just transition from one point to other point is not easy. You need somebody to help you to transition from one point to the other point. So as explained by Sanatana Goswami in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, about this particular episode of Akrura leaving Vrindavan to go to Mathura with Krishna and Balram, is explained that Akrura had this very, very wonderful plan that he will stop there and he will, at this particular place which was called the Brahma Rida, which later on became Akrura Tirtha, or the place which is now known as Akrur Ghat or Bhatrol also, but it's mainly Akrur Ghat. He said it is this place, a very, very special pastime happened when Krishna was in Vrindavan. When Krishna saved Nanda Maharaj from the kingdom of Varuna, and he rescued, and it came out, Nanda Maharaj saying, I am amazed to see what I saw. This demigod was so opulent, so powerful, but he was serving my son. I don't understand what this son of mine who really is. And there was the theological discussion among the Brijbasis. Who is Krishna? And they say, well, Garga Muni said that he is somewhat like Narayan. His activities are somewhat like Narayan. But now we can see that he is not somewhat like Narayan. He is Narayan himself. But just see the amazing love of the Brijbasis. Even though there is such closeness, there is such intimacy of the Brijbasis that even though they obviously knew that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, Sanatana Goswami explains that the Brijbasis said, Nanda Maharaj, we are all your subjects. We are all your villagers. We are staying in your village. So we are your relatives. And your son is Narayan himself. Please ask your son to give us some benediction because we are related to you. Because your son is Narayan. And Krishna was hearing this. And Krishna made a statement, as Sanatana Goswami explains, that people do not know what they do in this material world. And it's explained that there are two meanings to this. In general, the materialists do not know what they are doing in this material world. They are completely ignorant of the fact that they are going to suffer for being Krishna Bahirmukha. They are going to be suffering. But it also had a second meaning. Krishna was saying this statement because he said that these Brijbasis don't know what they are going to get after this life. Because they are so glorious. What benediction do they need? They are already benedicted. So Krishna, just to find out what they need benediction, he said, okay, what benediction do you want? One Brijbasi raised his hand. He said, what? Say, I want liberation. Other Brajbasi raised his hand. So what do you want? So I want to Vaikunta. So Krishna said, they do not know what they have. So Krishna said, I must show them what they have. So Krishna got all the elderly Brajbasis, along with Nanda Maharaj, and he came to this Brahmarid place. And he submerged into this Jamuna, which is called Brahmarid. And after he was submerged, Krishna gave them the whole experience of Brahman, of liberation. And they experienced liberation. But Krishna was a controller. I mean, once you are in that Brahman, it's so difficult to get out of that place. But Krishna was controlling this. Krishna said, now stop, Brahman show is over. Sometimes we have this show, right? You are on the show and you feel many times you go to the Nehru Planetarium. I don't know how many of you have been there. And you see this show and then see all the galaxies and woo, and then lights are on and then say, oh, you are on the chair. And you realize that, you are a normal person, but otherwise you think you're floating in the galaxy. And so Krishna said, show off now, it's Khatam, liberation is over. Now I'll take you to Vaikunta. So Krishna, in the same Brahmarid, gave them the experience of Vaikunta, the opulence of Vaikunta. He himself was just 4 hands, sitting on sleeping on Ananta Sesh. He saw all the Vaikunta Murtis. And somebody in that Vaikunta said, Krishna, Krishna, which is the supreme Vaikunta? He raised his hand. We want the supreme Vaikunta. And Krishna closed the show and again said, now supreme Vaikunta. And he showed them the darshan of the supreme Vaikunta planet, which is Golok Vrindavan. And they saw and they were surprised. And they said, this looks just like our home. This is just like what, like our house, like our Vrindavan. The cows are there, the same Jamuna, the same trees. This is like a house. And Krishna revealed to them that you know not what you have. You do not know what you have. So that's how this place revealed to them the liberation and Vaikunta. And Akrura thought that this was the best place for Krishna to remind him about his transition, about his preparation to switch from the Vrindavan mood, switch to the Mathura mood of opulence, of power, of majesty, of control. And that's why what is described for verses and verses, many times we find the same verses, Krishna's, just wearing this and blue colored clothes and yellow. But each of this description is so special because it has a meaning. Because what Akrura saw was Krishna's preparation to switch his mood. Krishna also is a human being, please understand. He's not he's God, no doubt, but he's a human God. So he also has human tendencies. Please understand that. So he also has to it's not a machine that you just pop and you switch on. Then you become, from Vrindavan you switch to Mathura mood. There is a transition phase. And Krishna had to switch and understand. And Akrura was that catalyst. Was helping Krishna in that reaction of switching over from Vrindavan to Mathura. Because it was a major change. Please understand, for 10 years, it's like people who are staying in the farm. Many of the BTs and VTs who are staying in the farm. You don't care what dhotis you wear because anyway they are going to be spoiled by the cow dung and so you are fine there. But suddenly you come to the city center. I remember the example given by my spiritual master. And he was staying in a farm project and for years. And then he was told to go and preach. So, without any facility. And then, he had his dhoti which was, all smelling of cow dung and cow urine. And he didn't have proper he had these big gum boots, which they would use because they had to walk in thick muck. So you need a gum boot. So he came to the city place. He was looking very strange, he said, because that switch is not easy. Because the way you dress in a city is different than the way you dress in a farm project. And that's why we see many brahmacharis, they come to the hospital. I saw yesterday one brahmachari from the farm. But his cloth was completely yellow. He was oblivious. Because, he was still in the Vada mood. But he was in the hospital. And his clothes were all, and I went closer and I could smell the great fragrance of cow dung coming from his body. And this is so nice, but you have to switch because you're in a city now. You have to be the way city person looks to be accepted, to be relevant. To be relevant to the people. So Krishna, can you imagine for 10 years he was, Gopal. He was wearing just simple, simple garland of forest flowers, wearing a yellow dhoti, and just freaking out in Vrindavan. Suddenly he has to switch. And here he is going to enter Mathura. And we will see in this next few chapters the opulence of Mathura. The people there. And many times when we come, it would happen earlier. We would go to a large pilgrimage, Vrindavan Dham, Yatra and everything. And then when you come, the train is coming, and then from Virar you start seeing the local train. And it feels so strange, right? Where am I? Local trains, people standing. Because our train comes from Gujarat and we had the first glimpse of Bombay. And you feel, what is this? I've come back to this local trains and this train, Churchgate ka train hai. I said, what? What am I hearing? Again you are back to those announcements and these trains and people dangling out and everything. You feel that there is a transition for 1 or 2 days, you don't fit. I don't know, I'm sure all of you experienced that, right? Is this such a misfit after being in some place for a long time? Similarly, Krishna, he needed this. So Akrura said that let me help Krishna to get into this mood of his majesty. And then Krishna also accepted this service, and that was the place where Krishna showed as a proof to Akrura that yes, I am accepting your service. Yes, I am ready for my service. Here is my brother Balram who is Ananta Shesh, and here I am who is the Supreme Lord Vaikuntapati, Mathuradish. And I am going to be ready with all my power and opulence to kill Kuvalyapid, to kill Chanur and Mustik, and to kill Kamsa, and to establish Ugrasen back on his throne, and go on to further become Dwarkadish. So Krishna, took this mood very, very nicely. So in this particular episode we see that Krishna's party has ended. As we say, party ends. Many times we say this party should not end. Arey maza aa raha hai. But the party ends. So party time ends and the time of responsibility starts. And this is the life of a sadhaka. How well he lives his life between Vrindavan, which is sweetness, and Mathura, Kurukshetra, which is responsibility. And that is Krishna. He is teaching by his own example. Isn't this our life of all of us? We are trying to create our heart, our mind as Vrindavan. Amar man Vrindavan. We are trying to create that. We are trying to, Divyat Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Siman Ratnagara Singha Sarasto. We are trying to create in our heart a throne where we can make Radha Govinda sit on that throne. Mama mana mandire ek bar, aa jao giridhari. Right? So in my mind, please once, Krishna please come. So that's Vrindavan. Wherever Krishna is, that's Vrindavan. But we also have our tons of responsibilities as we live life in this world. And if you do not properly transition on a regular basis between Vrindavan and our responsibility, then we'll be in a mess. If we just remain in the Vrindavan mood, then we'll not be relevant to this world of responsibility. What I mean is not that Vrindavan is not a place of responsibility, but we just talk about sweetness of Vrindavan. It won't be relevant. But if you just forget Vrindavan, and you just make your life full of responsibility, without the mercy of Krishna, without the attachment to Krishna, then again you will be without any potency, because purity is the force. So that's why we see constantly our life is nothing but how well we are able to go from Vrindavan to our responsibility, which is Mathura, on a regular basis. If you see our life, every day, the morning part of our life is to fill ourselves with the Vrindavan mood. Chanting Krishna's holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Observing the beautiful Mangala Arati. I was hearing a lecture of His Holiness Gopinath Swami Maharaj. He says that the only thing which is same, happening at the same time between the material world and the spiritual world, the same thing happening simultaneously, is Mangala Arati. In the spiritual world also, the gopis are performing the Arati of the Lord before the Lord finishes his pastimes. And that's why we have this first Arati, which is also happening here. So it is directly the spiritual world. We are worshipping Krishna in Vrindavan in all our temples, as said by Srila Prabhupada. But after chanting, after Mangala Arati, after chanting, after this Bhagavatam class, we all will have our responsibilities. And you just say, well, I want to be in Vrindavan, I want to just not take too so much care of my responsibility. Then you'll be irrelevant to the world. You have to switch over. And how well you can switch over and how well you can balance is going to be judging how well you are going to advance in Krishna consciousness. Because the important thing is, the most amazing thing is, when you want to balance something, it is only one point. If you want to balance this book, there's only one point where this book will balance. There's no 2 points. A point here and the next point next to it, the book will fall. There is no 2 points of balance. And if the devotees, by their sadhana, do not find the balancing point between the sweetness and the responsibility aspect of ours, then we will be off balance. We will not be able to perform our devotional service properly. A balance between making our heart sweet, relishing Vrindavan, but just relishing and not doing anything about it. So I was thinking that there was a Akrura in Srila Prabhupada's life. And that Akrur in Prabhupada's life was his Guru's instruction, which brought Prabhupada out of Vrindavan. It is the Guru's instruction which takes you out of Vrindavan to help us do some practical service for the spiritual master's mission. Srila Prabhupada had his instruction, and he was staying in Vrindavan. He was a scholar of Vrindavan, very well respected Acharya. A great Brijavasi scholar. He could have stayed in Vrindavan, but that instruction of Bhaktisiddhanta, preaching in the Western countries in the English language, was the Akrur in his life, which brought him out. From 1959 to 1965 he stayed there, but he was wanting to get out of Vrindavan, carry Vrindavan with him, and have a life full of responsibility. And then we see Prabhupada, what an amazing personality he was. He comes to Vrindavan after preaching in the West. And we heard this very, very simple, humorous story, but a deep lesson story. Prabhupada comes to Vrindavan, somebody picks him up. I think it is Garg Muni Prabhu who picks him up from the airport in Delhi. And Prabhupada is entering Vrindavan from the Chatikara road. And they're all waiting. Prabhupada will speak something. Prabhupada was silent. And said, because Prabhupada is entering Vrindavan and some esoteric thing will come out of Prabhupada's mouth. Prabhupada said, cement. We should get cement. And we should protect the cement and so people don't cheat us. So here was Prabhupada teaching the important lesson of transitioning and doing the needful while keeping the mood of Vrindavan, but doing our responsibility. And that's exactly what Krishna is doing. We know as this pastime we read in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that it was just so difficult for Krishna to leave Vrindavan. He was constantly meditating upon Vrindavan, and this whole Nava Vrindavan pastime which happened in Dwaraka, where Krishna becomes this whole pastime of Lord Jagannath in one sense. You can imagine how it was just so difficult for Krishna to leave Vrindavan, but Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya cha duskritam. Responsibility supersedes personal sweetness. If we are just attached to what makes me feel good and I will do what I feel good, that's not that is important. What is required to be done for the mission of the Guru and Krishna. And Krishna himself did that. Krishna didn't have to leave Vrindavan. He could have enjoyed. But he said he had service to perform. That's what he told Srimati Radharani. I have to go. The world is waiting for me. I have service to perform. And the most dear devotees for the next 115 years, they were completely living in complete distress. And Krishna tolerated that distress because he had responsibility to perform. So what we can learn from these beautiful transitions, and it's a beautiful transition. The previous verse talks of Vrindavan, and suddenly the chariot leaves, and with the chariot, we all are driving with Krishna towards Mathura. And what does it really mean? This particular statement, what it really means to us is, we all have to understand the great importance Krishna himself gives to performing the required service to this world. And as grihasthas, as brahmacharis, we all have service to perform for the world, for the Guru's mission. So if we balance this, we try to learn this art of balancing between Vrindavan and Kurukshetra. That's why we have this, Prabhupada said, why is Krishna not Parthasarathi? That's why we have this temple, Radha Parthasarathi. And we have Radha Shyamasundar in Vrindavan. And in Delhi we have Radha Parthasarathi. Because it is all the same Krishna. Parthasarathi, when Krishna was driving the chariot of Partha, in that Kurukshetra battle, which was millions of soldiers fighting, Prabhupada said still he was always remembering Srimati Radharani in Vrindavan. There was never a time where he was forgetting Vrindavan. But he was doing the needful, driving the chariot of Arjun. And as we go further, Krishna got misunderstood when the Shamantaka jewel was stolen. Krishna had to explain to the world that I am not a thief. He had to do that. He was misunderstood. Right? And Krishna had to clear the misunderstanding in people's hearts. That I didn't steal it. And he did the whole activity. Of course, in the bargain, he got 3 queens to marry. Krishna never does anything without a benefit. Right? But it's a wonderful lesson that we all try to learn about the importance of keeping our heart in the mood of Vrindavan, trying to create Vrindavan in a mood, the way Srila Prabhupada has given, by chanting the holy names. But while our heart remains in Vrindavan, our body and our mind and our activities do the service which is required to be done in Mathura, in Kurukshetra. And we all have, it is from the land of sweetness to the land of meanness. That's what I was taught, a transition for Krishna. Vrindavan was a land of sweetness, and Krishna was transitioned from land of sweetness to land of meanness. They were all mean people in Mathura. They were all trying to kill him. They had mean plans. And constantly Krishna dealt with all mean people, Duryodhan, Shakuni. The whole Mahabharata, the whole life of Krishna after leaving Vrindavan was all dealing with mean people. Krishna did that. So we all have to understand. We are staying in this mean world, this Kali Yuga. This world is a mean world. But we have our service in the mean world, while keeping our heart full of sweetness. Let that meanness not enter our heart. We have to protect our heart and keep it sweet. And fill it with sweetness every day by chanting, by associating with the devotees. But then ultimately we all have to go out. All of us. As soon as this class is over, this room will become vacant. Everybody will go into the different chambers. Right? To do service. In literally 5 minutes, you will not find anybody in this room. Why? It's not that we are trying to sleep. Even if you sleep, that's fine if that is part of a service. But let us all understand that how quickly and how wonderfully we can make that switch. Sometimes people take a long time to switch. Then they lose out on time. How to make that switch? Okay, Bhagavatam class over, make a quick switch. And then, okay, get in the mood of service. But keeping Krishna in our heart. That's what Krishna is teaching. He is switching over. Something was so difficult for him. He is teaching by his example. And from now on, Vrindavan is finished. It's history. And we will go further and see the beautiful pastimes of Krishna in Mathura, of service, of responsibility, of fighting, of chivalry. But yes, as we have complete faith in what Prabhupada said, there was never a second where Krishna was not thinking of the Vrindavan and not thinking of the Brijbasis while doing service. So this is what we learn from Krishna, that how we must be dedicated to our own personal services while trying to create our heart as Vrindavan. Thank you very, very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Any questions? Radha Gopinath Prabhuji. Time to switch. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki.